When I first started to look at Scripture, New Testament, I didn't have really any background in Christianity, didn't really even know what I was going to find. And as I read through the Gospels, I was struck by a texture of each Gospel that was so familiar to me, as it's so similar to the kind of texture I would see when I read supplemental reports that are written by detectives who are interviewing witnesses in a crime. I noticed right away, for example, that witnesses never, ever agree. On any case I've ever worked, there's always what appear to be contradictions between the eyewitness accounts, and they're at a certain kind of level, a certain texture, a certain ethos that I see in the accounts. I started to see that as I was reading the Gospels. I said, wow, these really feel like they have the degree of variation that I expect to find between reliable eyewitness accounts. But I thought, could these really be eyewitness accounts? Well, if they are, they have to pass 4 things, a test that I apply to all eyewitness accounts. It's really a test that is written out in almost every set of jury instructions in America for any criminal trial. The questions are, were the witnesses really there to see what they said they saw? Can they be verified or corroborated, even in some small way? Have they been honest and accurate over time without changing their story? And finally, did they possess a bias that would cause them to lie? I needed to know if the authors of the Gospels could pass the test in those 4 categories. And so I simply started to dig in to determine how early were these written. Were they written early enough to have been written by eyewitnesses in front of others who would know if the stories were lies? I think there's more than enough reason to believe they were written early enough to have been written by eyewitnesses. Can they be corroborated by something? Maybe, I don't know, the other statements of non-Christians early in history, or archaeology, or internal evidences that would tell us if the authors are accurately describing events in the 1st century? I thought that was actually a reasonable inference also from the evidence. Have they changed over time? Well, if you track the narratives of the Gospels as they are transmitted from eyewitness to students, say John to Polycarp and Papias and Ignatius to their students, Irenaeus to his student Hippolytus, if you follow the course of history and examine what is being said about Jesus, it doesn't change. These are early accounts that don't change. And if you look at, the bias, what potential bias, there's only 3 reasons why anyone lies about anything. That's for money, sex, or power. That's it. Every crime I've ever worked is driven by one of those 3 motives. What is driving the disciples if they're lying to us? If they're lying, they're only lying for one of those 3 reasons. Well, what do they get out of this? I think in the end, I really realized that I've got to come to grips with this Jesus of Nazareth. The stories, the eyewitness accounts that are offered in the Gospels, they pass the test as well as any ancient account about anyone. The only thing that's left to do is decide, well, how am I going to respond? Once you determine that an eyewitness is telling you something true, the only thing left for the investigator is to do something with what he's just learned. So for me, the question was, if this is true, now what am I going to do with it? And that's the question that you have to ask yourself as well.